Well, good morning. Welcome once again to the old KOHI Garden Spot. Master Gardener Darryl Boom here with Chip Bubl. Chip, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine, Darryl. How about yourself?
I'm excited. Spring is here because the Spring Garden Fair is going to be starting in about an hour,
Hmm.
and we want to encourage our listeners to, if even if you don't have anything specifically in mind, go to the fairgrounds and check it out. It's going to be there from open at 9 a.m., be there till about 3, and it's always a interesting kind of an experience to wander around and see what's available. And the other
Yeah,
thing we're doing is we have been recording using Skype for I don't know many years, and for some reason Microsoft decided to get rid of Skype. So we're now on Zoom, and I'm kind of an old school guy. I really love Skype, and but anyways, we're trying a new platform. We're on Zoom today, just like we're modern in the modern age. So we'll see how it works out.
we'll see how modern we really are, or you
Yeah.
are. I can tell you, if it were up to me and my ability to manage it, I would be in the dinosaur age.
Yeah, you'd be in the iCloud.
Yep.
Well, the only thing we're recording now, I just have to be able to find the recording somewhere on my
Sure,
computer. Anyway,
sure.
let's get
Anyway,
going.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've had some nice weather. So let's talk about what that can mean plus or minus.
Well, I think the weather we've had, it's been, a day or two of rain and then some really nice weather this last week or so. And that has a huge impact on growth of plants, which is all positive, and making the soil lose its moisture faster. That's all positive if you're going to be planting stuff in the soil. And then it really is important for plant diseases. And for example, black spot on roses, some of the diseases on fruit trees, they're all stimulated by extensive moisture in the spring. And with this, maybe a day or two of rain and then some good dry period, boy, that wipes them back pretty hard. They don't like that at all. So there's a lot less of it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about with this weather and what the bees mean and what we can expect from that.
The bees are extremely happy, whether it's a mason bee or a bumblebee or a regular honeybee, they are humming out there. They're
Yeah,
going for the gold, for
great.
for the honey and everything else. And so that's going to, for our fruit trees like apples and pears, that's going to end up with a pretty good, what we call fruit set. So there's going to be a lot of fruit on those trees.
So, well, this is good news, but also kind of bad news. What about keeping them thinned, and when do we worry about that?
So thinning is actually pretty important because if you have a heavy load, you can actually lose some branches that you don't want to lose. So one standard is to leave one apple about a hand's width apart. And again, it probably depends a little bit on the size of your hand, but the hand
Uh-huh.
widths apart from the next apple. So everything in between you take out and just keep going like that. And that's a fairly quick kind of reasonable way of doing it. If you don't thin, you'll still have lots of apples. They'll just be smaller, and in some cases, quite a bit smaller, besides the potential weight issue that we talked about a second ago.
Well, as things start to grow and everything, let's talk about the timing of fertilizing, like blueberries, raspberries, boysenberries, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they definitely need some fertilizing right now. All of those blueberries, and then what we call the caneberries, the raspberries, boysenberries, and marionberries. So they can you can use a mixed fertilizer, or you can mix a fertilizer into a solution and water them. If you're doing that, you're going to use less fertilizer each time, so you have to do it more often. But either way works. So
Hmm.
either lay some out there on the ground, especially right before a rain, and that'll take some of it in, or else follow the instructions on the container of one of the dry fertilizers that is mixed into water, and that would work too.
Yeah. And before we go to break, any tips about weed control around berries?
Berries are tough because it's difficult to use an herbicide because they're so close to the ground that they're
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
yeah. So that's really a lot of handwork.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
but it's very important.
Okay. Well, we'll continue this, but first, this message from Dahlgren's. Well, good morning. Welcome back to the old KOHI Garden Spot. Master Gardener Darryl Boom here with Chip Bubl, and we're trying to figure out Zoom, how it works, and how you keep track of how long you've talked, which I have no idea. So we're just going to do a little more talking for part two. Anyway, I love these subjects you bring. Where did this come at? A weed called horsetail. What's that all about?
Okay, so horsetail is a weed that you don't want to get. And
Okay.
I'll talk about that in a second about how you get it. But it looks a
Okay.
little bit like an asparagus when it comes up, except that it has more little things sticking out from the plant itself, from the shoot that looks like the asparagus. And like an asparagus, it does die back in the late summer to early fall, but then it returns the following spring. So it's what we
Hmm.
call an herbaceous perennial.
Hmm.
Now, the problem is that this thing can spread like crazy, competes with every plant that you might want to have in your garden,
Oh boy.
everything from roses to berries to vegetables to it's just not something you want. And it used to be, and I don't think this is so true now, but it used to be people would get it by buying some soil from from one of the places that sells soil and like in uh, truckloads and stuff like that. Anyway, you'd buy, but there would be some pieces of this thing in there, and then you would have it.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And so, but it is a great challenge. And in terms of control tactics, herbicides, like I said, don't work really well in some of these situations. So you end up having to basically go out every 3 days and remove all of them, and every 3 days and remove all of them because you're trying to do what we call carbohydrate starve. In other words, if they can't get to the sun, they can't make carbohydrates, they can't make those exasperating invasive root systems. And so over time, if you're really good at it for a couple of years, you can actually control it, but it's really tough and you can't take vacations in the summer.
Yeah. Okay. So you're basically killing the roots by starving it from
Right.
any sunshine at all.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I know a lot of our gardeners raise carrots. That's all. They're kind of easy to do, and they're a great thing to get from your garden. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, they're not too bad to do, especially in raised beds. They work really well because the beds are usually a little bit more loamy, a little bit more sandy, a little what we call lighter soil, and carrots really like that. So if you keep them fertilized and watered, it works really usually pretty well. Where you get into trouble with carrots are two things. One is that you have them too close, and you need to thin them so they're at least 2 inches apart in every direction from the carrots you want to save
Yeah.
from the other carrots because those other carrots are gonna compete with that carrot for the sunlight. So
Hmm.
you want to do some good thinning. And then there is a fly called the carrot rust fly that is it comes out about a month and a half after you plant, or sometimes it can be earlier than that. The only way to work with that is to use a row cover and grow the carrots under a row cover.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I it's kind of hard to go into a carrot bed where you got all these carrots and then kind of remove a bunch of them to control them. But it's something you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Artichokes. I really love artichokes. Ben, you have a note here on Jerusalem artichoke. What is that exactly?
It's not an artichoke in the way you would know it. It's actually
Uh-huh.
related to a sunflower, and but people get interested in them, and they've got a fleshy kind of a root system, a little bit like it might look a little bit like an iris or something like that. Anyway, they're quite edible. They have a mild flavor, and they can be used in quite a bit of different cooking. It hasn't gotten really popular because just like the horsetail we talked about earlier, it
Hmm.
actually can become a little bit of a pest sometime. But if people want to try it, it's an interesting plant.
Yeah. Well, Chip, time's flown by. That's known to do here on the old KOHI Garden Spot. In closing, a lot of people have septic tanks. I know we dealt with one when we were in Scappoose, and you have a big drain field, of course, for that. And let's talk about how do we work around that and how do we deal with that?
Well, the thing you don't want to do is do anything that impacts negatively the drain field. So you don't want anything with woody root systems or things like that. So,
Hmm.
and you don't really want to have food growing there. So it would be a great place for an annual or herbaceous perennial flower bed. And
Oh,
that
right.
would be probably the best possible use outside of grass. They'll tell you about septic drain fields, put grass on it. That's what you should do. But
Yeah,
that doesn't, there are other options.
yeah, got it. Okay, Chip. Well, Spring Garden Fair doors are opening in about 45 minutes, so encourage your listeners to get out there. I do appreciate them tuning in and hope they catch us next week right here on the old KOHI Garden Spot.